Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Q2 RC West Oversight Committee public session. Next slide, please. So just a couple housekeeping reminders before we get started, and I hand it over to Chris. This call is being recorded for informational and convenience purposes. Please request permission from RC West before reprinting any materials or transcripts. And any materials related to the RC West Oversight Committee are available on CAISO.com. If you navigate to Stay Informed and then the RC West tab, and you can scroll down there to find all the materials and other related information. Next slide, please. To raise your hand, if you connected in the WebEx through your computer, use the Call Me option. You can select the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. If you dialed it into the phone only line, you can press *3, and that will get you into the question queue. And please remember to state your name and affiliation before making your comment. If you need technical assistance during the meeting, you can send a chat to the event producer. I think it's also listed as Intelor Events, or it might be called Host. And today's event producer is Yolande. And you can also send a question to all participants, or all panelists, or me, Yelena Kopolov-Alford. Next slide, please. So our agenda for today, it's going to be Oversight Committee business, Chair, Vice Chair nominations by Chris. Then we've got Tricia and John. Then we're going to go RC West operations updates, working group updates, ECC expansion white paper update, and then go on to future agenda items and have some time for public comment before we adjourn. I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Next slide, please.
Perfect, thank you. So jumping right into the oversight business, I know everyone's been chomping at the bit to join this, but we're looking for nominations for the chair and vice chair to take over on Q3. So anybody feel interested in nominating themselves or offering up? We do need one from the north and one from the south. Seems really quiet in this room for some reason. Okay, if you come across any ideas, go ahead and email it to either myself, Chris Sanford, include that. And with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the next topic. I think, Tricia, is that yours? The grid?
Yes, thank you. Can you go next slide, please? So just wanted to provide a status update. So last year we had Grid come in as a transmission operator in PNM BA area, and we're working through the end of a project here to bring them on as a transmission operator in CAISO BA area. So this is related to the 10 West Link project, which is actually a 500 line between Edison's Colorado River Station and APS's Delaney Station. So in accordance with our requirements in the tariff and the BPM for reliability coordination, we need to provide, kind of public status update on how we're progressing. So far we're on track. We're still working through procedure updates. We are going to do a kind of operational walkthrough coordination call with all the involved entities, APS, Edison, GridForce, CAISO, and RC West. And right now we're scheduled to go live with the line and with Grid as a TOP for those facilities June 5th. Any questions? Okay, so next slide, please. And I'll transition this over to John Spomer. This is actually related to another customer onboarding activity. Go ahead, John.
Thanks, Tricia. My name is John Spomer. I'm an attorney here at CAISO. And I just want to give everybody a reminder regarding a request we got from LS Power Grid California to become a party to the WIDSA, the Western Interconnection Data Sharing Agreement. LS Power recently entered into an RC services agreement with RC West. It'll be operating within the CAISO BA as a TO top and transmission planner, and will be coordinating, several projects that are interconnecting with PG&E's transmission. LS Power is currently in the process of being certified as a top by NERC. As most of you are aware, in order to become a signatory to the WIDSA, you either need to be an RC, a BA, or a top. If you aren't, a party can still request to become a party to the WIDSA by sending us a statement stating why they need to become a party and need to have access to operating reliability data under the agreement. And then they also need to get 80% approval from the existing WIDSA signatories. So LS Power provided, that's their statement of need. You can find it at the link that's posted here on the page. And specifically, they require access to operating reliability data before their top certification is complete, so that they can complete sort of necessary onboarding activities and certain implementation activities that they need to go through in the meantime. So to date, we have heard from about 50% of the WIDSA signatories who have given their consent for LS Power to join the WIDSA. However, we're still missing responses from the other half of you. So if you would kindly look at that request, or maybe follow up with the person responsible for sort of analyzing those WIDSA requests at your company, and also to sort of help out, we'll be sending out another email out to everybody, probably either later this week or early next week, just reminding everybody to look at the request and get us their response as quickly as possible. So anyway, that's all I have, just a gentle reminder on that. If you have any questions, you can feel free to either reach out to me or to Martha Sedgley here at the ISO, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, John. Can we go to the next slide, please? Looks like next up is RC West operations update. Tim?
Sure. Let's go to the next slide, please, Elena. Just a quick review of the EAs to date. Again, most of these, some 13 of them, I believe, are related to MLK weekend, but you can see we're already at a close to total for 2023. Largely, this is due to, in part, a change. I guess a change that seems to be other BAs are adopting, where some BAs are requiring, in the power pool, are requiring an EA to render emergency assistance. So that's really a large number of those. You can see our peak load year to date, and our 2023 peak, and then our historical peak. However, if we do have or experience another heat wave like we did in 2020 or 2022, I think we'll get very near to those, if not break those load records. So going forward, a couple other things I don't have a slide for, but they were quite newsworthy events, was the eclipse on April 8th. We really didn't have any problems with that. Really due to good proactive management and preparation by the BAs that were impacted by that. So that went really very smooth. I guess we don't have another one until 2040 something. So quite a ways away. The other item was the GMD event this last weekend, which was all over the news as well. We were in a heightened state of awareness to the level of that. We did call a conference call with our TOPs and BAs at the operator level, reminded everybody of the GMD, but we didn't experience any impacts, or we didn't have any impacts reported to us from that event. So really strong event. It was pretty spectacular for the people that were able to get out and see it. But again, we didn't see it. The other notable item of that event, not only the level, but the latitude that was down to 45 degrees. So that was a little bit more south than we would typically experience. Usually experience the impact is at 48 degrees or 49 degrees around the U.S.-Canadian border. So a big change there. Next slide, and I think we're going to have Samson's going to go over some SOL information as well. So Samson's online.
Yeah, hi, I'm Samson Adigun. Thanks, Tim. Just an update on the efforts of the Voltage SOL Task Force. As you all are aware, it was a joint task force, including members from the Real-Time Working Group and the Operations Planning Working Group, kicked off in 2022 March. So we finally wrapped up the effort of this task force on April 24. That was when we had our last meeting. So a lot of work has been done through these 2 years of the task force. In October, the SOL methodology was revised. The task force came up with a system voltage limits template to update all the voltage limits in the HANA, in all of our applications, RC West reliability applications. We started a parallel operations effort. The TOPs that were part of the task force really helped out in helping to, weed out a lot of nuisance voltage alarms that the RC sees in our applications, as well as on HANA, which is visible to a lot of those TOPs. But with the implementation of FAC 11 on April 1st, we were able to really kick off voltage SOL monitoring in real time. Now it's a daily task for the RCs to monitor voltage SOLs, follow up with the TOPs, and overall the voltage violations they deal with in real time has been very, very manageable. There is still some, additional tuning that could be done. So we will continue to work through the real-time working group and the data exchange working group. We have some data requests that went out to help for additional data from entities to help improve the solution. But overall, the task force effort has been very, very successful, and just want to thank all the TOPs and the representatives from all the TOPs that helped out in this effort to get us to where we are, where the RC is actually now monitoring voltage SOLs for the RC area. So again, thanks for all of the support, and that's all my update there on the voltage SOL task force.
Next slide, please. Kathy, is that you?
Hello. I have here a couple of slides showing the recently published procedures. A good portion of them are really just annual review with minor formatting. RC 9210, RC 410 was updated for annual review, but in addition, we added non-firm for wholesale energy sales, and then RC 410A, 410B, 9010. I won't read all of them, but most of them are, again, annual review with minor changes. RC 610, the SOL methodology procedure. This was a major revision by the joint real-time working group and operations planning working group task force to address the changes for FAC 11.4 and FAC 14.3. The RC West coordination plan was updated just due to the name changes of a few procedures, taking out that the NERC standard version out of the titles. RC 120 was updated for annual review, and then we updated section 3155 path references, and then just minor formatting, et cetera. RC 120A, again, annual review. We updated language for clarity, added a new data request for storage resources, and for hybrid resources, we updated to add sharing the list of BES exceptions with neighboring TOPs with RC portal. And we updated FAC 14 references, and then we added to the exceptions tab. RC 120B, let's see, exceptions based on discussions with SPP, and then we added RC 225 and RC 226, and then updated standard references. Let's see, RC 130, we replaced references to RC 130A with RC 610 due to the retirement of RC 130A. We added a reference to RC 310, RC 610, and NERC FAC 11 to the references section, and then removed that RC 130A from the appendix section. And then again, we retired RC 130A and incorporated section 3.3, the top notification requirements for SOL exceedances. And we can go to the next slide, please. And then the list continuing, RC 310, this was major revisions to several sections with the revision of FAC 11, and we revised RC 610 SOL methodology. Let's see, we retired RC 130A and incorporated the SOL reporting guidelines into the new section 3.3. We revised the SOL, the definition of SOL, and added a definition for system voltage limit to align with the updated definitions in the NERC glossary. The other ones, most of the other ones here, RC 650 or 550, RC 610A, 640. These were all just minor updates due to the standards version updates. Again, the titles, removing that standard version from the titles of 640, 650, 660, and 670 also related. And then RC 9000 was an annual review and a major reorganization of the procedure for clarity. We added a background section 3.1 and clarified content. We merged steps related to the northeast-southeast separation mitigation to the section for potential open loop. We merged steps related to suspending WEIM and steps related to disabling the northeast southeast separation scheme during islanded conditions into the section on open loop, and reorganized and renamed subheadings for clarity. RC 9330 was just updating references. And I believe that is it for the recently published. Are there any questions on any of those? Okay, we can go on to the next one. And the next slide is upcoming changes, and kind of the same thing. Most of these are annual review with minor formatting. It's kind of that time to update most of these. And RC 120A, we clarified the PMU data requested from BAs and TOPs with IBRs. And then there's a new request to provide list of existing PMUs and their locations and clarified requirements for MVAR curve data submission. The others are all just annual review. And that's really it. Any questions on any of these? Okay, thank you.
Next slide. I think we've got RC West metrics coming up next. Kendall.
Hey, this is Kendall Parra with the Network Applications Group here. So I'll be covering the next two slides on the RC metrics for our EM&A application. So we're covering the SC residual errors for the first quarter of 2024. And overall, you can see mostly normal trend, slightly higher for the previous 3 months, but overall still within kind of the general range that we've been seeing before. So, you know, so some of these, we don't have a specific reason, more so a variety of factors that kind of contribute to a general increase or decrease. But we do have some defects as far as unit estimation to improve that and get that solving more accurately and reducing the residuals in an effort to pursue ICCP and bad quality and you know, so certain things like placement of VAR around line side shunt capacitors or shunt reactors will cause some residuals. So certain things like those we have, you know, and in queue to resolve. So still working on those, and we'll try to see a more general downward trend in the following quarters. Next slide, please. So the slide's on the trend for the RTCA non-converged contingencies. So since October 2023, we see about the same range of non-converged. So if you follow the black line, that's kind of showing your total average. And, you know, we had a higher trend back in July, and we have been just having some overall model improvements, and we had the enhancement to run a contingency with all the RAS actions in real time to better troubleshoot non-converged contingencies and go after that bus level mismatch where those contingencies are really struggling. So that's one of the factors that we attribute to seeing a better trend in this quarter and the previous quarter as well. And in comparison to the previous year, you could see the blue trend. We had a much higher spike around this time. So this does look a lot better this year. And from there, I'll turn it over to Daniel from our TOE group. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kendall. If we go to the next slide, please. So I'll be presenting one slide to you today. This is our RTCA versus DACA comparison. So RTCA is our real-time contingency analysis tool, and day-ahead contingency analysis is DACA. And so what this metric is showing is how many exceedances we see in real time versus day-ahead. There are some caveats to this data, as you know, we run RTCA multiple times per hour, whereas in day-ahead we only run one case per hour, among other things. So as you can see, in the first quarter of 2024, we've maintained a fairly steady metric right here. It is notably higher than a similar period than last year. Predominantly, the mismatches in January were concentrated in the BPA and Montana area due to some bad weather and forest outages in that area. In February and March, we noticed that the mismatches were predominantly clustered in our non-RC area, which we do monitor parts of as well, mostly in PSCO, Public Service of Colorado's area. We do have some efforts underway to improve this metric, although I believe Raja might speak to that during his particular section. Or did you want to speak right now, Raja?
Yeah, I think there's a slide on the OPWG, some of the discussion, but we can talk right now. There's an effort, John Eminatio from our real-time group has come and presented in our OPWG meeting to talk about this and how we can work with the TOPs to improve the day-ahead reliability studies, because that is going to be critical. It's not just for market purposes, right? It's for reliability purposes, and it all depends upon what information that we get from load and generation, the schedules from each of the TOP. So this is where we need your help so that we can fix it and we can identify the right issues that can match with what the real time is saying, right? Not 100%, obviously. The forced outages will change the scenarios, but at least improve this percentages. But thank you.
All right, thanks, Raja. That's the end of this slide here. I'll pass the floor to Tim for the next slide.
Okay, this is a city ticket resolution progress. So you can see the number of cases we've had opened and closed. We do see a little uptick in March, and I'm not sure what that's related to, as anybody else does. I don't know. I suspect it may be around the database load and some of the data submissions we had with voltage SOLs at this point. So, yeah. But we're working on that, as Samson talked about. We do have a enhancement in Q to help us with our voltage SOLs further than what we've done already, and that's really to manage the voltage, the reactive device switching in the post-contingent state. So the analysis will take that into part and will not report a violation if a cap bank is to trip off for its settings or it's or on for its settings. So same with reactors. Next slide. Okay, I think we're on to the working group updates.
Thanks, Tim. So with the working group updates, next slide, please. I think we're up with Raja with FERC 8A1 and AAR and DLR.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone. If some of you guys know that we have two stakeholder groups that we are leading, and most of you guys participate in that. If you're not participating in those calls, then these slides will be new. But if you have been participating, these are the same slides. Next slide, please. So this is for update for you guys where we are with respect to the project timeline or our project timeline. As most of you are aware, in general, we have split this overall effort into 3 separate tracks, track 1, 2, and 3. Track 1 is the real-time reliability applications. What does that mean? Where we plan to use RCWest, right? RCWest plans to use the real-time ambient ratings that any TOP has and use in our real-time reliability process. Again, strictly reliability process, or EMS, or EMNE, and HANA tools. So that process, originally we were supposed to get by Q1 2024, but we took some delays because there are some changes that we needed for FAC 11. As most of you guys are aware, FAC 11 was April 1st. So because of that, we hit some delays, but we're still on track by Q2 2024. So hopefully once we have our system in our place where we can receive the ratings through ICCP, then at that point, I know Cyril has been working with you guys to establish those mappings. The TOPs, some of the TOPs have been working with one-on-one calls to get those mappings done. Once we have our tools ready, we'll implement those mappings in our production. At that point, we can start using those ICCP ratings in our process. That is track 1. Track 2 is primarily a lot of things, but at the end of the day, the primary goal of track 2 is enable us to get a look-ahead application where we can receive all the 240 hours of ambient ratings from the TOP into a centralized location. So we have signed a contract with OETA. I have a slide to talk about that under the track 2. So that track, late 2024, early 2025, will have some capabilities. Again, we will, as we get more information, we're going to share with the TOPs and work with them and test with them, because we don't want to everybody do at the same time. So we need to stagger the TOPs. So we'll go through that process once we have more confirmation on the OETA side. And the track 3, which is the major work that will be done for both CAISO as well as the RC West, is the track 3. What do I mean by is we are getting the data to track 1, track 2, but there's a lot of applications that we need to use these ratings. You know, the look-ahead reliability applications, the short-term outage coordination process, as well as for the CAISO day-ahead market, real-time market. There's a lot of other applications. So all that efforts will be implemented under track 3. Right now, we have some vendor internal resource constraints, and the reason being there's a lot of tools. So we're deciding what we can accomplish by July 2025 and what tools we cannot accomplish. Once we have that idea, the plan is to go to FERC and ask for an extension for those tools that we will not be able to implement. But everything else we'll still plan to implement. So what does that mean for you, right? Ultimately, for you, for the TOPs that plan to provide the ratings, that will be done through track 2. So as long as you guys are ready to send the data, once we have the track 2 tool available, I think that should be good enough for your compliance, right? And then the ISO RC West will be where do we use these tools? If you're not able to use the data in a particular application, we need to go and request for an extension. Any questions? Next slide, please. So again, as I mentioned, our track 2, we have signed an agreement with OETA. We are actually meeting with them weekly calls to develop the schedule. And the main thing is the requirements. When I say requirements, especially the format, the specifications, how the TOP is going to share the ratings to us. So we're working with them on that. Once we finalize that, before we even OETA codes, we will share those specifications with the TOPs. So the TOPs can go and start coding on your side and plan to submit when we are ready. So that is the intention. Next slide, please. So right now, these are our RC West goals, in the sense, and CAISO goals are embedded into this. We have been working with the WEC System Review Subcommittee to collaborate on seasonal model development that reflects the 4 seasons. You guys know this 881 requires 4 seasonal ratings. So with the 4 seasonal ratings, potentially we need to run 4 seasonal studies on any path ratings or any operational studies. So if you want to do any seasonal studies across the RC West footprint, we need base case models. And where do we get those base case models? The WEC SRS review. I mean, WEC SRS is the one that develops those base case. So we had a couple of meetings with them, and ultimately what it was decided is they want to go the direction, but the committee needs to take a vote on it. So they plan to take a vote in their June meeting, which I will, I'll be attending and proposing that. And then once that vote is taken, if the committee decides, then at that point we'll have the seasonal models from WEC, right? WEC is ready to do that. It's SRS need to approve that. The other thing that we're also doing this Thailand rating coordination and what RC can do. I know I have a slide to talk more. I'm going to discuss that part in the next slide. And the third one is we are also discussing with the TOPs. One of the big change from this 881 is if you have the ambient rating, how to use those ratings in the TTC calculations for the inter-area paths, right? So technically you will have 240 hours of ratings for next 10 days. As the order is written, you need to technically calculate TTCs with those ambient ratings, right? So how do we do that? What is the process? I know there's different TOPs have different ways of going about that. Ultimately, we are talking with the TOPs and agreeing upon what is the right way of doing that. Next slide, please. I already talked about this big seasonal base case model. So once the committee approves it, hopefully they will generate the models sometime in 2025 and be ready by 881 goes live. Next slide. Yeah, so this is the tie line and the coordination, right? Ultimately, there's some discussion with some of the TOPs is, can RC West be like a clearinghouse on some of this tie line ratings or the joint owned equipment rating? What does that mean, right? Right now, if there's a 240 hours of ratings, each TOP on either end of the tie line is going to calculate. Now, depending upon the rating methodology, depending upon location, depending upon the weather sources, right, you will have different ratings on those 240 hours, right? So now, historically, if it's a seasonal rating, collaboration can be done between the two TOPs and determine what rating we can use and use the lowest of it. But when you have 240 hours, it cannot be done manually, right? So that's where the clearing concept is coming up. Since both the TOPs are going to send those ratings to eventually to RC West through this WebLine R, can WebLine R clear the most limiting rating on that tie line between those TOPs and share with everybody? Ultimately, the clearing will be done, and we plan to use, RC West plans to use that rating. Now the question is, can RC West provide the rating to all the TOPs? And we are working with OETA on this approach. And once we have a better requirements with them, we'll definitely share with the TOPs. But definitely that should be able to accomplish. But another complexity on this, what do we do with the neighboring RCs, right? So we need to be doing the similar thing with the neighboring RCs as well. So there's some discussions that RC West is having with the SPP and establishing a process. So again, eventually we both agreed that it should be an automated process because we cannot do this manually. So once we agree on that approach, we'll definitely share with this team. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is, again, there's different things that we are kind of proposing, right? You know, you can, there's a difference in rating, different in emergency rating. You can take a minimum of it, but what if there's the duration of the ratings on either end of the tie line are different? If a TOP1 is doing 4 hour versus the TOP2 on the other side is doing it 1 hour rating, right? If you use the 4 hour versus 1 hour, you'll always end up being the 1 hour rating will be higher than the 4 hour rating, lower than so it'll be more conservative, right? So the question is, can some kind of alignment reached between the two TOPs that everybody's calculating same durations on the tie lines? So this is a proposal that RC West has asked the TOPs, but we don't have any agreement at this point. So if we don't go, if there's not alignment there, we still need to agree upon what is the logic that we can use for clearing the lowest rating, right? We need to use the conservative rating, but make sure everybody agrees that what those conservative ratings are and what is the difference we can do between the durations. Any questions? We can see people, I mean, if there's a question on the WebEx, we can't see.
No, there's no hands on WebEx.
Okay. Thank you, Elena. Next slide, please. Okay, I think that's it from 881 updates point of view. If there's no questions here or online, I'll go to the next one. The operation planning working group updates. Next slide, please. So again, there's only one slide. These are the items that we have discussed the last OPWG. The primary thing we started the discussion is the day-ahead reliability study improvement. As Daniel pointed out in his previous slide, right? The DACA study, the comparison between DACA, what DACA is showing up, what the real-time contingency analysis is showing up. Ultimately, it all depends upon the quality of model, the quality of data that we have in the day-ahead process, right? So we're gonna work more based upon the data that we need. We're gonna work with those each individual TOPs and do some data requests and try to improve our models. Because ultimately, we want to improve those, reduce the differences between those two models, which, I mean, it's not trying to improve a metric. Ultimately, the primary goal for day ahead process is to show the right reliability issues for the RCs, so we can develop operating procedures, operating plans if there's a SOL exceedances that shows up in those tools. So if we don't see, then we don't have an operating plan, and obviously RCs will be surprised to see. So we want to reduce those. So I definitely want the TOP's help on that effort, which is critical for all of us. The second one is the RC-TOP contingency definition review discussion. This is another big data request that might come through us. Is right now the TOPs provide the contingencies, and we use as it is. So one of the questions that we have is sometimes we see errors in those. It does not match with what we have in the model, and we see errors in real time. So how do we reduce the errors in real time? So we need to agree upon a common way of checking those contingencies before they go into the production contingency analysis. So how do we do that? It's going to add more work for everybody. So how do we address that? So definitely we'll make more discussion with you folks and then see where we can land, so we can get to a point where we have accurate contingencies in our contingency analysis, right? Inaccurate contingencies lead more issues. I mean, incorrect issues, it's fine. RCs can solve it, but ultimately, if we don't see the issue, that's a problem, right? That leads to SOL exceedances, which we don't want. Fact 11, Samson already discussed. And the last one is the highest emergency rating and day-ahead reliability studies, right? I know we have been talking about acquiring the highest emergency rating for the real-time contingency analysis process, especially under the FAC 11 SOL exceedances. But we wanted to make sure that everybody's aware that we are not going to use those rating in our day-ahead reliability process, right? Ultimately, we still want to use the emergency rating in the day-ahead reliability process because we want to identify issues. Our concern was if we use highest emergency rating for in the day-ahead reliability process, we might not see any issues and we might not develop any operating plans to solve the issues. So if it really shows up and the flows are above the highest emergency rating, then RC operators will be scrambling to develop a procedures in real time. So which we don't want. And there was no opposal at that working group meeting when we said we're still going to use the emergency rating. So just for awareness. I think that's it from OPWG. Thank you, Chris.
Next slide. Rachel.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Good, okay. So for data exchange updates, let's move on to the next slide, please. So as Kathy mentioned in the procedures update, we had an RC 120, 120A, and 120B update that was effective April 1st, and that was our annual update and review from meeting with Data Exchange back in March. We also met last week and discussed the following draft data specification requests that are currently up for commenting. So we've posted these draft changes as well as a comments template to RC portal under the Data Exchange Working Group for those BA and TOP customers to review until May 22nd. And that includes the following changes with data specification requests. We're honing in more, as Raja was just mentioning, with the different working groups on data quality efforts. And part of those efforts include looking further into the IBR data. This includes installed PMUs, so understanding the full list of PMUs that are available, getting real-time voltage magnitude and angle, current magnitude and angle, and then the frequency measurements from those existing PMU installations. We're also working with BAs and TOPs on individual efforts regarding the existing data request, but we're looking to potentially modify the unit D-curve data issues. That way we can see the full curve as well as get an updated SIM model for those units. And then there's a review for the radial bus bars and updated bus exclusions to RIMS. This is all existing data. And then we have an internal effort of reviewing a priority list of bad SCADA measurements, and we're working with BAs and TOPs to fix this on an as-needed basis. And those are the proposed due dates as well. So if your organization hasn't been involved, feel free to get involved with the Data Exchange Working Group. We have that commenting period available as mentioned. and we're planning to make this effective on May 30th. Any questions?
Thanks,
Okay, thank
Rachel.
you.
Next slide, please. I think we're back with Raja on the ECC task force paper.
Thank you, Chris. Next slide, please. Again, I know we have come to the steering oversight committee and presented on this couple of times. This is more of an update where we are, but for people that didn't attend prior meetings, we still want to talk about what this effort is, so they're aware of it. Ultimately, ECC, Enhanced Curtailment Calculator Task Force, was created by the working group to evaluate expanding the web ECC process for both SOLs and IROLs across the Western Interconnection, right? So the task force came together, both RCs, RC West and SPP, and there's a couple of stakeholders across the West has participated in the process, more than a year process that went through, and ultimately they come up with this curtailment approach, the comprehensive curtailment approach that for both tag transactions as well as the non-tagged. When I say non-tagged, especially these are if a BA is serving their own load using their own internal generation, right? And some BAs don't tag that. I know some BAs tag them, but ultimately we're saying if the BA is serving their own load, it's not tagged. So they came up with a proposal, different methodologies, how you can curtail them so that it's equitable and it's fair for everybody across the Western Interconnection. So that again, the plan for that process is to work in tandem with the existing unscheduled flow mitigation process. Again, not replacing it. At least that's how the task force saw it. Next slide, please. So the white paper has been finalized, and as we mentioned, the RC West had a lot of suggestions, especially with the model. I know if you guys are aware today, the RC West actually provides the RC West model that inclusive of all the Western Interconnection to this process. So there was a proposal to change it to an independent entity. We had a big discussion, good discussion at the steering committee, at the task force level. And finally, they agreed that, with RC West, that let's continue with the model that we have today. So we have agreed, both RC West and SPP has their support to this white paper. Next slide. So where we are right now, there's a lot of different steps before this can go live. I can go in detail, but in general, the first one obviously was the ECC working group approving this white paper, and it's complete. At the April 30th meeting, the working group approved it. Now the next step is the Western Interconnection Reliability Coordinator Executive Committee. That's a WIRE CEC. That meeting is scheduled on June 6th. Both SPP and RCBS will present that committee and get their approval. So assuming that goes through, the next step is the big effort is the NASB process. What does that mean, right? So as I mentioned, one of the major piece of this tool is the curtailment methodology. How do you curtail tags? How do you curtail non-tagged megawatts? And what criteria you curtail? What priority level you curtail, right? And what is the right way of curtailing it? And what is the right way of modeling it? So all those discussions need to be had when across the Western Interconnection and agreed upon at the NASB process. And once that goes through and gets approval, so we plan to start again. RC West and SPP had this schedule in discussions and finalize the schedule. We plan to start that at Q3 2024. And before we get there, we need, again, as I mentioned, it needs to be a Western-wide effort. So we need involvement for all the stakeholders in the Western Interconnect, right? So both SPP and RC West is going to be doing more stakeholder presentations. And we want to do that at our committees, different ways, different approaches. So, and obviously there's a EAM market. So we want to do in those meetings as well and get those parties involved in these discussions. And WEC is interested in this too. So WEC wants to have a discussion with both RC West and SPP before we go, either after the WIRCC approves or before it, but we're in discussions with them so we can get there on board as well. Again, once the NASB, it goes to NASB process, this is where it's going to take time, depending upon how long, how much opposed. If there's no opposal at all, then it might be straightforward. But if there's an opposal, then obviously there's going to be negotiations done. So depending, it might take 2 years, it might take 3 years, or 4 years, right? Once that is done, it needs to be filed at FERC, and then after that, OETA has to implement that process and then go live, right? So again, it's overall, we see it's a 5-year effort. It's if everything goes well, and we are at the first step. I think that's it from a presentation point of view. But if anybody has any questions about this effort, I can definitely try to answer.
Next slide.
I think that's it from slides, right? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, again, this is ultimately, right, this what does this do, right? Once you have this, once you go through all this process, so in the meantime, right, it's a 5-year effort, but what we want to do is we want to improve the existing tool as well, benchmark the model, improve the model. So what we suggested is we'll work with the TOPs, both the RC West and SPP TOPs, and come up with constraints on the seam. I mean, like come up with let's say 30 constraints or 20 or 30 constraints across the Western Interconnect, and we can benchmark all these calculations in this tool and fix any issues, fix modeling issues, fix calculation issues, or fix service point modeling issues, and get to a point where this tool is calculating right impacts on those constraints across the Western Interconnect. And then once you have the right tool that calculating all the impacts accurately, then once you implement the curtailment methodology, then you have a full-blown validated tool. So at least that's the intention. We want to do this in parallel with the NASB process. Any more slides, Selena? Is this done? Okay. Yeah, that's it. Any questions for me?
Let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. Future agenda items. So our next meeting, of course, for the oversight meeting is August 22nd, 2024. We are holding that in person in Phoenix. Sorry, a joke. Just kidding. It'll be virtual. Visit the RC West homepage, but any topics or considerations, please send them to isorc@kaiso.com. Next slide.
Okay, so this is my my plug for the new website is coming, and then there's a couple of training sessions for the things that are going to be changing in the next couple of weeks. Next slide, please. Okay, we're open for public comments. You can press the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen, or you can type your question into the chat. Okay, next slide. Okay, the session is adjourned. So give us about 10 minutes for the executive session to start. So we'll start that at 2:10. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
The conference is now over. You may now disconnect. Have a wonderful day.